So I definitely get the sense that any feeling that they were biting off more than they could chew, for lack of a better term, in last week's episode had to come from the fact that we were dealing with not one, not two, not three, but 4 new characters all at once. Because this episode probably had more in it than any other episode of the show yet. But it only used characters that we already know. And it worked super duper well. Like, just the fact that we weren't being introduced to new characters and then expected to like and care about them by the end while also learning a bunch of other stuff really helped. And it's interesting, this is the episode that probably does more than any other episode of the show so far, because it's the first Hooty POV episode, at least as far as I recall. He has definitely been a major player in the plots of other episodes, but I'm like 99.9% certain that there hasn't been another single scene that was entirely from his perspective. Except for like gag scenes, maybe? Except for some of the scenes in this episode that firmly put this in his POV. The plot of this one being that Hooty sees that the members of his family, people that he sees it as his job to protect them, because of course he does. He's literally the guardian spirit of the house or whatever, right? Are going through stuff that they need to deal with. And so he takes it upon himself to help them deal with these things. King is trying to figure out more about himself and his dad by figuring out what kind of demon he might be. Ida is dealing with the curse still. And Luce is dealing with the fact that she is both trying to figure out how to get the little mouse thing to tell her what was in Philip's journal, and also avoiding the one person who could help her do that, that being Amity, because of the awkwardness currently between them. And so in an almost anthology-style episode, Hooty takes each of them, and in his very Hooty-ish kind of way, which does take things too far in literally every situation, forces them to confront the things that they need to get past these hurdles. He initially starts with King, going over the different kinds of demons, more for our benefit than for King's benefit, but there is a lot of lore there. Like, we find out why some demons can use magic, that there are a specific subgroup of demons that can do that. Like, I guess it's not specifically why, but we know at least now at this point that they're distinct from some of the more monstrous demons we've seen. It is interesting to think about, though, why they're so different. And I might have some ideas about that, actually. And King doesn't really fit in any of these categories, which means you can't just look up more information on who he might be using one of them as a starting point, and that's part of the issue. But throughout his interactions with Hooty in this episode, he learns that even though he's not the kind of demon that usually has magic, that has the ability to cast spells, the ones that we see at school, for example, he does have magical powers. And they've actually been foreshadowed with his squeak of rage that he's mentioned at least once, right? I'm not making that up, right? As they are emotional based and seem to be sonic in nature. They seem to come out of his mouth. They accompany his cries. Meanwhile, Hooty forces Ida to sleep so that she can confront the owl beast, and she does. And I'm definitely going to do a theory about this at some point, similar to my Amphibia is an isekai theory, where I talked about what to expect from Amphibia based on trends in isekai anime. Because I definitely got some really strong Naruto inspiration feels from Ida's plot in this episode. But she confronts the owl beast. She re-experiences a bunch of her memories involving it. But then she also experiences one of its memories, where it literally gets transformed or sealed in the scroll that was used on her, one or the other. Like, it was a victim, though. The literal creature was trapped by some hooded figure. And realizing this, Ida is able to relate to it, I guess is probably the best word. They still can't really communicate with each other. But they form a bit of a bond and agree to make things easier on each other, to stop giving each other such a hard time, And in doing so, they're able to combine together into a new curse form that's more harpy-esque. And it seems that Eda can just utilize this form at will now. She's going to have to learn how to use it, but she has powers again, and they come directly from her finally fully accepting the curse as part of herself. But at the same time, it's still not one-to-one to any real-life thing, right? Like, I've seen a lot of posts likening it to a chronic illness, and yeah, the show's been doing that too, but at the same time, there's a literal other creature here involved in the situation, another living thing. And it's Ida's consideration for that other thing, as well as herself, that allows her to reach this point. So there's definitely more layers to this than just an analogy to any real-world thing. And then finally, in the third of these plots, Hooty recognizes that Luce has feelings for Amity, and that she's not going to be able to deal with her other problems until she deals with that one way or another. And part of Luce's issue is that she feels like she's too cheesy. She's always been big and flashy and kind of a nerd, and back home people used to look down on her for that. And so she's been afraid to take things further with Amity because she doesn't know whether or not her usual style of doing things is going to work for Amity. She's worried about embarrassing herself. Or probably more accurately, she's worried about driving Amity off by doing something that other people would find embarrassing. Not recognizing that Amity likes her for her. Something which Hooty fully understands, so he sets up a romantic date between the two of them that he forces them into that is entirely Luce's style, and Amity eats it up until Luce starts tearing it down and worried about being embarrassed. And so Amity thinks, oh, this wasn't Luce doing this. She must not actually like me. And a little bit of a conflict brews between them. Hooty gets all upset. And King and Eda must use the new things that they discovered about themselves, thanks to Hooty, to not exactly stop his emotional tantrum, because that's not really a thing you can stop. He's still more powerful than all of them put together. But kind of do damage control until he's okay again. And at the same time, they also help Luce to build up the courage to finally ask Amity out. And the two of them are now an official couple. It was just this perfect culmination of all of the things that happened in this episode. It was really excellent. It was a really excellent climax. And there's a little bit of an implication that even this little tantrum at the end was part of Hooty's plan to get everything to work out smoothly. And at the end, he does make a little bit of a mistake. I'm not going to spoil it in the episode because it's pretty interesting. But he does make a little bit of a mistake. I'm sure it's going to remedy itself because the nature of it, like, it's something we have seen him undo several times throughout the show. I'll just leave it at that. But for the most part, he helps out a lot in this episode. And I want to say right out the gate, I really like, especially in King's, because, I guess Luce interacted with him a little bit, but less directly because she was mostly just yelling at him for setting up the whole tunnel of love thing. But in King's segment with Hooty, we got to see some more prolonged interactions between the two of them. And you can tell, even though most of the time their interactions with Hooty are meant to be jokes, and so they're a little, I don't know, disparaging towards him because it's funny. Like, I do that too, right? Because it's funny. They do care about Hooty as much as he cares about them. You can tell from the way King talks to him during their part of the episode. And I thought that was a nice touch. And aside from the stuff about demons in this episode, which I already said is super interesting, I'm going to have to rewatch the episode a couple more times at least to absorb even half of it. There's a ton of other lore here too. Like the segment where Eda is experiencing one of the owl beast's dreams. It definitely doesn't feel like it's in the Boiling Isles where this took place. Because we see it get turned into a scroll. The scroll falls in the ocean, and then the ocean washes up on a beach in the Boiling Isles and is picked up by someone who then resells it at the market. And based on the backgrounds and even kind of the ethereal way that segment is colored up until the point where the scroll is found, it definitely feels like this all happened in another region that also sprang up from a fallen Titan. It seems like the backgrounds are of a different Titan, and it might even be one that we've seen before, because it kind of looks like the head of the creature that was fighting King's presumed dad in one of the reliefs back in that tower. And it got me thinking, how do we know that those are all King's dad? Maybe they're just his ancestors in general, and that one was our Titan. These two Titans killed each other, fell, and became two different locations that now have life living in them. And they're relatively close together, and that's where the Owl Beast came from. It's really interesting. It's probably not going to pan out, but man, it's so much fun to think about. And it was just background stuff in an episode about 3 entirely other things. And of course, being the shipper that I am, I have to talk about the relationship stuff in this one. It's very cute. Amity and Luce's interactions are, of course, consistently adorable. And I did like that in the end they kind of asked each other out. That was a pretty nice touch. But more than anything, first of all, the word girlfriend is used for Amity's relationship to Luce immediately after they're together, which is good. Acknowledging that immediately is very, very good. But I like when this happened and how it happened. It was super realistic, first of all. The way they behave around each other as it's happening is super realistic. It's cute. Like, it's cute in a cartoony kind of way, but it's the kind of way you would expect 2 kids roughly their age to act in that situation. And this is also happening in just some episode. It's not happening at a season finale or even a mid-season finale amidst a bunch of dramatic stuff happening. They're allowed to get together as a couple. 2 girls are allowed to get together as a couple in a Disney show, in just a random episode of the show, and just be together after this. It feels like less of a big deal than it is. And I like that. That's part of the reason why I like it. Altogether, this episode was absolutely excellent. It gave us greater insights into Hooty, into all of our main characters, and into the world of the show, and it did it without feeling bogged down or rushed at all. Every element of the episode came together perfectly by the end. I don't think this is my favorite episode of the season, but I definitely don't have the same criticisms for this episode that I did for the last one, which is a good sign, right? As per usual, though, guys, I'd like to know, what do you think of the episode Knock Knock Knockin' on Hooty's Door? If you have seen it, let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content. Subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias, as well as the ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.